Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
All right, we're going to break the format again. Just wanted to let people know who weren't able to see us on YouTube and Facebook and a whole bunch of places where we stream. But the other people can hear us on the podcast, obviously. Yes, I'm good. The other people could hear us on the podcast, which is why we continued on without the video. But I was telling you, we are going to switch. We're going to switch over away from the cables, and we're going to go with fiber optic. Because of your generosity, I think I'm able to do that now. It increases the cost for us, but I think we're good. So we're going to do it. And in that case, we're going to have to take the studio offline for a day and install that and then reprogram all of our stuff. Now, in addition to that, I'm telling you that the piece of equipment that, reset itself in the middle of our day right here, that's what caused the video to drop out. We want to replace that, and we want to go with a system that's a real broadcasting system. The first system we had, it's been, good enough for the launch and all that. But now that we're underway, I just want to tell you I have a plan. The plan is going to happen. I don't want to tell you what it is yet, but you're going to like it. You're going to be really, really happy with it. You're going to be thrilled with it. But the piece of equipment that I need to purchase is also a big install. There's a learning curve on it. Poor Brett is going to have to retrain himself to run that thing. I don't want to say the brand names because I don't need lawsuits or anything like that, but we're going to get a demo of the equipment. We're going to have to go all the way down to almost to Miami to get a demo of it. If we think that that's the right piece, and I do, we will purchase it. It is very, very expensive. I mean, like tens of thousands of dollars, okay? But we'll do it. And then we'll have to install it and reprogram everything. Our board and all that stuff is all, code, and we have to recode everything. So it may be, a day or 2 days or something like this, but you will be so happy because once we have that kind of professional gear, doors open for us. Things that we are... people want to do stuff, but they can't do it because of the way that I broadcast. So if I change it... things are possible. So I just wanted to tell you that it's all for good. Thank you very much for, helping us during my birthday. That was really very supportive. So, as a lovely gift to you, because it's, we're having a polar vortex. Do you know what the polar vortex is? Okay, just briefly, for these idiots like Donald Trump, who are the leaders of the free world, who still deny that climate change is real. The climate has changed. And what it has changed into, while it's freezing here because Arctic air, North Pole weather, is usually not this far south. It's usually kept up by a jet stream in the North Pole. But the jet stream has allowed for the Arctic weather, for the North Pole's weather, to become Chicago's weather, to become Indianapolis's weather, right? The jet stream doesn't keep the North Pole's weather at the North Pole anymore. The jet stream is being moved south by climate change. That's why it's so cold. Meanwhile, while it's so freaking cold, you can get frostbite in 5 minutes in some place. Hundreds of schools are closed today. Government offices are closed today, and he didn't even shut down the government. So much has come to a screeching halt. The Postal Service, through wind and rain and sleet and hail, they've never seen anything like this. These people cannot go outside. They cannot go outside because of this major catastrophe called climate change. While it's freezing here, it's like freaking steamy hot on the other side of the world. Record temperatures on the other side of the world. So you know what? Could we just get through the last few moments of this president, this one, and begin to choose somebody new, begin to choose to live, begin to choose a transparent... the corruption report came out yesterday, and we only briefly touched on it, but it's true. The corruption report came out yesterday. We're not even in the top 20 of decent democracies. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? We have dropped out of the top 20 countries that aren't legitimately full of corruption. This is sick. this is twisted and this is wrong. The other thing that I was explaining before, you joined us back again on Facebook and YouTube and the other platforms, Periscope and all that, is that Mueller has a new filing today. And the Mueller filing today has to do with the Russians doing what the Russians do, interfere in our election and change American opinion. So this particular filing, while not sexy, not an indictment of anybody you know and not a brand name indictment, is a response to what the Russians are doing. So first I want to just play Senator Richard Byrd, the Republican from North Carolina, asking the intel community yesterday, what are the Russians doing? Are they still doing it? Okay, just to put it all in context.
Is it the IC's assessment that this country's adversaries continue to use U.S. social media platforms as a vehicle for weaponizing disinformation and spreading foreign influence in the United States? Director Wray?
Yes, that's certainly the FBI's assessment. Not only have the Russians continued to do it in 2018, but we've seen indication that they're continuing to adapt their model and that other countries are taking a very interested eye in that approach.
That's China, the other.
It is certainly NSA's assessment as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the little voice you heard back there is not the little voice that reads to you. No, it was the NSA cybersecurity head who said, yes, he agrees with what Chris Wray said. And here's what they mean. This is the evidence, because we got this filing a day after they testified. Why? Why did we get this filing day? Because your idiot president, your useful idiot president, your Russian agent president tweeted at the intelligence community who testified yesterday that everything that this president says is demonstrably false and that you can't knock him for his foreign policy achievements because he doesn't have any. That's what they said yesterday. Here.
We have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly.
ISIS is intent on resurging and still commands thousands of fighters in Iraq and Syria.
Chairman Kim, we have a great chemistry, and we're well on our way. You know, we signed an agreement. It said we will begin the immediate denuclearization.
North Korea will seek to retain its WMD capabilities and is unlikely to completely give up its nuclear weapons and production capabilities.
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be.
Not only have the Russians continued to do it in 2018, but we've seen indication that they're continuing to adapt their model.
Okay. What does he mean by adapt their model? All right, this filing tells you what it means, okay? The Russians have filed for sensitive information to be disclosed to them. And the reason why Mueller had to go to the court and file and say, we don't want to disclose documents identified by the special counsel as sensitive to Putin's billionaire chef and the employees and officers of Concord, his company, as they're preparing for trial, because not only did we come to you, the court, and demonstrated good cause for restricting this sensitive material, but we now find that there was a Twitter account set up called Hacking Redstone that included a link to a Russian-hosted site that took the non-sensitive information we provided to Yevgeny Prigozhin of Concord Management, Putin's billionaire chef, but altered it and tried to make it seem like Mueller had nothing to discredit his investigation. That's it in a nutshell, okay? And they found out that this, website and this Twitter account were hosted by Russians who are outside of their jurisdiction. And we have no way of, prosecuting them for doing this stuff. But yet they still seek to find these Cult 45 members, target them. They still yearn to talk to Al-Qaeda, the base of Trump's party. And these tweets are received by Cult 45 with open arms and open minds and they try to read these files. Half of the files are the real files, and the other half are completely phonied. to make it look like this is all he has. He has nothing else. Concord didn't do anything. Russians didn't meddle. It's all a load of crap. Here's the story. And you know, I love his indictments because they read like once upon a time there was, right? So they start off once upon a time on June 29th. They don't say once upon a time. On June 29th, 2018, this court entered a protective order that included provisions restricting the disclosure of material designated by our government as being sensitive. The protective order barred any individual or entity, including Concord, including their officers, Yevgeny Prigozhin, other than a U.S. defense team, from sharing, accessing, discussing sensitive discovery materials without the court's approval. That order required that sensitive discovery materials be stored offline because they knew. So these sensitive materials are not online. So for anybody who thinks that they read sensitive materials from Bob Mueller because hacking Redstone led you to some Russian-hosted webpage that you thought was a real American webpage, that was bullcrap. That is Russian disinformation, a campaign being launched yet again in 2018 to make you think that Mueller doesn't have the necessary goods or evidence about this Russian troll farm paid for by Putin's chef. The material that Mueller has is stored offline. I can even tell you where. They're at the offices of Reed Smith. They are not disclosed. They are not to be transported or transmitted. They're offline. And they certainly are barred from being transmitted, stored, or disclosed outside of the United States. The protective order that was entered into by the court before he charged Concord required that any person reviewing the sensitive material must be accompanied at all times by a designated and identified employee of a U.S. office of Reed Smith. So whatever they are tweeting out, whatever Russian crap they're putting out there for the Cult 45 members, for the maggots, is fake. It's fake Russian disinformation. The court, in its order, classifying, granting Mueller all this, shouldn't be disseminated, shouldn't be transmitted, shouldn't be, nobody outside the United States gets it. This material is under seal and it's kept offline. And if somebody needed to read it, then they needed to go with somebody who was designated and identified by Reed Smith's office, who they have chosen, and everybody agrees on that this would be, you remember when they wanted like a middle of the ground lawyer to vet what was gained in Michael Cohen's office, because it was a lawyer's office, same with Manafort. So they had a designee that the court chose who would vet this material to see if anything was protected under attorney-client privilege. This is the same situation, same kind of situation, where everybody agreed that this would be the go-between, the middleman who would store offline these documents. Anyway, the court wrote in its opinion that these restrictions were warranted based on its finding that the government had demonstrated good cause for restricting sensitive discovery material, meaning material that they uncovered during their investigation. The court noted that the sensitive discovery, quote, includes information describing the government's investigative techniques, identities of the cooperating individuals and companies, and personal identifying information related to U.S. persons who were victims of identity theft. These substantial considerations, the court concluded, constitute ample good cause for imposition of a protective order. Then he goes on to describe, the other inclusions in this protective order that allows defense counsel for the Concord manager, for Yevgeny, to seek ex parte approval to disclose sensitive discovery materials to others, including Concord's individuals and officers, including Prigozhin. So it said that there would be a firewall council, somebody in between the Russian defendant, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and anybody that worked for Concord who paid the trolls in the St. Petersburg troll farm. There would be a firewall council. Not a member of the prosecution team. Okay? So that they would have some intermediary who would be vetting all this stuff and deciding what he could have to defend himself, so that the court could carefully balance our national security, the weighty law enforcement needs, and privacy concerns, so that Concord couldn't disseminate this information widely, right? So that's what they agreed to. Well, what happened was the non-sensitive information that they were given, the same non-sensitive information that we have, they altered it. This Twitter account called Hacking Redstone tweeted a link to a Russian-hosted website that included files that were wholly made up, wholly written by the Russians to pretend that Mueller didn't have anything.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
His worldview is a very primitive one. It's narrow, shallow, and short term, when what we need is wider, deeper, and longer.
You know, we had on Cliff Sims. He was in the White House. He was the, I guess, media strategy guy. He has a new tell-all book out. And what he said was that there's something about Donald Trump that changes the character of the people around him. He changes their moral compass. How does he do that? There is no question.
Listen, I'm an example of it. I've been in penance for 30 years over it, and he did this to me, pulled me into something that violated my own values. Yeah. His values violated my values. He absolutely does that, and it makes this an incredibly depressing time. I find myself angrier moment to moment, day to day, than I would have been 2 years ago if there were no Trump. And I think that's across the population. He disrupts you, is what he does.
How?
Because he is so relentless, number one. He comes at you and comes at you and comes at you. You've described the variety of ways in which he does that. And he has no conscience. So he is willing to say anything, to lie, to deceive, to distort, and not feel the slightest bit of guilt about it. And he throws anybody off. So we're operating, this is what you get. I said this in 2016. I haven't used this word that much since then, but it's absolutely so. He's a sociopath. He's sociopathic. And
meaning what?
Meaning the absence of conscience. It means there isn't a soul in there. There's not only not a heart, because he doesn't have that, but there's not a soul. There's not an internal barometer. There's no true north.
There's no true north. You know, that's a lot of words to say something I've been telling you for a very long time, and I know this from experience. Narcissists are contagious. I had that happen to me. I actually had a narcissist in my life who changed my moral compass, who changed the way that I dealt with other people, who changed everything about me, because they're constant and they're consistent, and they come at you and they come at you and they come at you, and they change you because they're contagious. They're contagious, and you don't want to upset them because they are the darkness. And their anger and their retaliatory nature makes it impossible for you to speak up for yourself, because you know that if you do, the wrath, the endless wrath, the retaliation, everything, any secret you've ever shared, anything, it all becomes fodder to embarrass you, to hurt you, to demean you, to diminish you. And, you know, I'm a very strong person. It happened to me. It really did. Some people are aware of who that person is. Other people never bothered to ask, but they saw it. They saw it. They were there. They experienced that person. They understand what I'm saying now, but they never bothered to ask, are you okay? Because something has changed. Are you okay? That's what happens when you have a person who has no soul. That's what happens when a narcissist is in your life. They are contagious, and they infect people and infest your life with their desire. And the reason why they're like that, in my experience, is because if they felt their feelings, they would implode. They would literally implode. They would have an episode of total disconnection because all their feelings would suddenly be things they felt. And the pain of it, the cognition that they did these things would be too much for them. And they would just implode. And that is what a narcissist is. So that's Tony Schwartz, who wrote The Art of the Deal. Donald Trump did not write The Art of the Deal. And he's saying that he feels even worse now watching Donald Trump be unleashed on America. And there is no disagreement among 60% of these United States, okay? The 40% or the 37% or the 33% of that those MAGA people, they latch on to all this Russian propaganda, to all the BS that goes on Fox News. You know, I mean, there was a story in the newspaper about how, and we saw this. Bolton the other day, he had a notepad, and he was in public, and his notepad said 5,000 troops to Colombia. In the middle of all this, contretemps over Venezuela, selling their oil fields to Russia, and in exchange, Russia gave Maduro $1.5 billion and military help. And of course, the people in Venezuela are even the last bitter enders, the last bitter clingers to Maduro are now, we want him gone. We've had enough. There's no food. There's, there's hyperinflation. An ear of corn and a tortilla is $50. And they've had it, right? And they understand that he was an oligarch and that he was corrupt. And they want him gone. But the one part of the government that still backs Maduro is the military. And some of the military wants to defect away from him. And they're asking the United States for help to defect. We don't need to go to war. It's always like, and these bitter enders, they always, we need to go to war. No, there's a million things you could do ahead of war, but we don't have the will. Donald Trump. So anyway, Bolton was in public, and on his notepad facing outward toward the camera, it said 5,000 troops to Colombia. And me and Scotty were like, oh my God, no, it turns out that there's a lot of notes that they've been, showing to the cameras. It's almost like, they're crying for help, these people. It's really creepy. And he keeps feeding the base lies in order to keep them on his side, like the bitter enders in Venezuela. It's really, he is dangerous. And people, here's a Rear Admiral. This is Rear Admiral John Kirby saying that this man is willfully ignorant, okay? That he is a witting accomplice, not an unwitting accomplice. That he is a witting accomplice and that he is dangerous.
This is not really a difference of opinion here, right? Because it's a difference of facts. The president is claiming a different reality than U.S. intelligence agencies with all of their resources are telling him. Is that dangerous for a president to stake out positions that are not backed by any intelligence we're aware of, but backed by his own view of the world? Is that dangerous for U.S. national security?
Yeah, I'm worried about that, Jim, in the cases that were brought up yesterday in terms of Iran, North Korea, Syria, ISIS. Those things are serious issues which we are trying to grapple with, not just from a national policy perspective, but in coordination with allies and partners. And when the president distances himself like that from his intelligence chiefs, it worries me on two fronts. One, it's not a different taking of the facts, if you were. It's ignorance. It's willful ignorance. And so it concerns me that my president, my commander-in-chief, isn't absorbing the context that these guys provide. And it's not all perfect. Intelligence is an imperfect science at best. Number two, I worry that it sends a strong message to our adversaries out there, particularly Russia and China, that there are huge gaps remaining in the national security decision-making apparatus in this country, and that they can run right through those gaps and try to further sow discord and division amongst ourselves. And that really scares me.
That's what is happening. The fake news exists, but it exists in Russia. The fake news exists, but it exists on Twitter. The fake news exists, but it is on fake Facebook accounts, okay, fake Instagram accounts. And the reason why Mueller had to file this, the reason why we know about this, is because a journalist on October 22nd, just last October, this Twitter account, Hacking Redstone, published this tweet that I told you. We've got access to the Special Counsel Mueller's probes database. We hacked a Russian server with info from the Russian troll case, Concord versus Mueller. You can view all the files Mueller had about the Internet Research Agency and Russian collusion. Enjoy the reading. That tweet included a link to a webpage that moved you over to a file sharing portal, okay? And it contained 300,000 files. And most of them were fake. And you know how we know about that? Real news. A real journalist. And this person is unnamed. But this person, whoever you are, you're a hero or a heroine. I don't know. But on October 22nd, a reporter contacted Mueller's office because that reporter was direct messaged on Twitter by an individual who said they got the discovery material by hacking into a Russian law firm that had stolen it from Reed Smith, the Firewall Council. Except the Firewall Council, Reed Smith, stores everything offline. None of what he has is online. And so the journalist said that he or she was able to view and download the files from some Russian legal company's database through a remote server. Some of the files used the same labels as Mueller's, and other files were made-up files that were managed on some site called Relativity that Mueller never used, and that was their clue that it was fake news being disseminated to the maggots, being disseminated to Cult 45 to convince them that there was no Russia thing. There's no collusion. There was no conspiracy. And it was fake news. And a real journalist reported it to Mueller. And that real journalist was contacted by a Russian through a direct message, same as Roger Stone and Guccifer and God knows what else, right? And that's how Mueller was clued in. So thank God for real reporters. Thank God for real journalism. Thank God there are people who are the fourth estate in this country. And the kind of swill and threats that they've had to endure from the maggots, from the Cult 45s, from Trump standing on a stage and telling them, turn around, look at that, see that back there? That's the fake news. Pulling Jim Acosta's press pass and doing all this nasty, nasty attack.
Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Barbara Starr, you walk the halls of the Pentagon. You speak to officials there. What is the reaction there when officials see the president deny, in effect, what they're telling him, for instance, about ISIS still being present in Syria?
ISIS, North Korea, and the latest this morning, as you guys said a couple of seconds ago, the president going after intelligence community leaders full bore, saying that they are extremely passive and naive when it comes to Iran. They are wrong. If the president of the United States believes his intelligence community is passive, naive, and wrong, one of the questions is, why does he keep them? Should he be firing all of them? You know, remember, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis resigned, did not get fired, as the president said, resigned because he felt he wasn't being listened to. And that's the fundamental question here. Or is the intelligence community even being listened to by the president? And can they continue on when they see this kind of language from him? I think it is very fair to say the intelligence community actually watches Iran very closely around the clock and pretty much knows everything that they are up to, especially their new weapons, their missile testing, their activities inside of Syria, the militias that they are backing, Hezbollah, the threat that they pose to Israel. One could go on, including their nuclear program. On the question of ISIS, you see that fundamental shift, that fundamental contradiction. What the intelligence community is saying is something very precise, which is, you know, this is not a win or lose. ISIS has still, according to the Director of National Intelligence, has thousands of fighters out there, while the president is saying the caliphate is disappearing, that we are winning against the caliphate. I think what the intelligence community is trying to communicate to the president, there's no win or lose. You have to keep working at all of these problems.
Yeah, but him and Pence are very busy being out there telling you, hey, we defeated ISIS and Iran is, North Korea is denuclearizing. And, you know, Russia's fine. We have no threat. The real threat is the southern border. We got a crisis. We got a national. You know what was interesting about the threat assessment yesterday? You only get this once a year. That's all you get. The intelligence community testifies once a year about the threats facing currently the United States of America. Not one of them said that there is a, southern border crisis, a national emergency, something that needs, immediate attention. Oh, hell no. They were talking about China and Russia joining together to disrupt American democracy, to take America's place in the world, to de-incentivize other democratic countries from believing that democracy can work or does work, and that, oligarchy or communism or some weird mashup of communism and oligarchy, making yourself leader for life, is a better deal. This is right out of the dictator's playbook. And then doing it by setting one of us upon the other. This is so sick, I can't even tell you, okay? And even Joe Manchin, Joe Manchin, he could go either way. You know how he is. He's very bi. Very, very bi. Partisan. He could go either way. And he's saying, you know what, this Trump thing is, it's not working. And as far as the southern border goes, yeah, we know there's no national emergency. We know there's no threat there. And the best thing that's on the table is still that deal from 2013. The one that I keep talking to you about. The one that everybody, the Gang of Eight, the bipartisan group, put out of the Senate, voted out of the Senate. And then idiot boy Ryan over in the House wouldn't take it up, wouldn't vote on it, nothing. And now they sit there, the Kevin McCarthy's of the world and the Freedom Crackers. Oh, this is the Democrats' fault. Bull crap. We voted for $46 billion in border security in 2013. A bipartisan piece of legislation. And those Freedom Crackers wouldn't take it up. That's number one. Number two, there was another bipartisan piece of legislation where the Democrats agreed to give idiot boy the whole $25 billion for the stupid wall in exchange for a path to citizenship for the DACA kids. And he turned it down. Could have had all his freaking stupid, could have declared victory. But he's such a good negotiator that he actually said no when they said yes and shut down the government for 35 freaking days. It's ridiculous.
You voted for plans that would include new funding for the wall. You voted for plans that included increase in spending for border security, but no new funding. You just wanted the government open. Those were where your votes were. Senators Alexander and Shelby have said that maybe the president should stay out of the negotiations.
Stay out of it.
Let the appropriators meet and have their discussions. Do you agree with these senators?
Well, I agree that basically that we are a separate branch of government. Article 1 of the Constitution is very clear. We have equal powers. And if senators can agree, representing a diverse group of constituents, and come to an agreement of what they think would be acceptable when they go home and explain it, I would hope the president would work with them. I think the president needs to open up and look at, basically, how about these DACA? How about these children that came in at very young ages with their parents? No matter if they came with their parents the wrong way, they had no challenge over that, or they had no choice of that. And now they've become productive citizens. They're in our military, they're in our schools and education, they're in our economy, they're in our society. Shouldn't they have a pathway forward? So the president needs to look at that too, rather than just basically a 3-year protective status, and give them a pathway forward to a citizenship. And that's what needs to be done. That's really what's preventing us, John, from getting to a final deal.
One of the architects of the president's immigration plans and policies, not just towards undocumented immigrants, but also refugees, has been Stephen Miller, the president's speechwriter and policy advisor. There's this new book out by Cliff Sims, who did work at the White House, who quotes Stephen Miller as saying, "I would be happy if not a single refugee foot ever again touched American soil."
Yeah. Well, I'm sure his ancestors would have had a different opinion of that, and probably do have a different opinion even today, because all of us came here from some place, some way. Someone allowed us to come and contribute and be a part of this great experiment of democracy. That's all people are asking for. I've said this. People come, John, for the wrong way for the right reason. They came the wrong way for the wrong reason. We want to get rid of the people that came for the wrong reason. It's basically committed crimes and taken advantage of our society and threat to our people. But you have to have a security on the border to keep them out. But on the other hand, can't there be a pathway forward? Look at the 2013 bill. It was an absolutely compromised bill between Democrats and Republicans. It was a grand plan. It's still the best thing on the table. We would not be having this conversation. We could be working on many, many other important problems and challenges we have.
Do you think the president is being pulled in an anti-immigrant direction by advisors like Stephen Miller?
I sure do. I absolutely do.
So even Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who's very bi, could go either way on anything, and does all the time, is saying that the white supremacists in the Trump administration are the ones that are creating this crisis and creating this fear in this country on brown people. However, yesterday, when the intelligence chiefs testified about the threats that the United States face, no one said, we have a threat on the southern border. Not one of them said brown people. They said the freaking Caucasians, the white people from the Caucasus, the Russians. They're the biggest threat. They're tearing our country apart. We don't have an emergency at the border.
The contradictions between what our intelligence agencies have to say about North Korea's plans to denuclearize, or the status of ISIS in Syria or elsewhere, and what the president has been promoting. It's obviously very important that the American people understand the truth and what we know about the threats facing the country. You know, I will say this also, though, that glaring absence that you talked about earlier, the fact that none of the intel chiefs brought up a threat at the southern border as being one of the most pressing threats facing the country, that could be Exhibit A in a challenge to any kind of a declaration of a national emergency. The fact that none of our intelligence agencies think it's an emergency, the fact that Congress on both parties don't think this is an emergency, I think if anything is going to undermine that legal case that the president may try to make, that hearing yesterday could be a central exhibit.
Because he's a jackass. Because he's a divider. Because he's a hater. Because he's a narcissist. Because he's a coward. Because he's a mealy-mouthed son of a bitch is what he is. I got to tell you, remember when we were talking about the shutdown and I said, how is it possible that he shut down the government and the exact people that are in charge of keeping this country safe and moving these cases along are the ones that aren't getting paid? How is it possible that his desire was to keep the country safe from some threat in his head by not paying the Border Patrol? How is it possible that he's keeping the country safe by not paying judges who 3 out of 4 of them who do immigration? There's 60 courts in this country that do immigration cases. There's a total of 400 immigration judges, and 3 out of 4 of those immigration judges weren't getting paid during his ridiculous shutdown that literally made people choose between chemotherapy and paying their mortgage. I mean, the harm that this man did. So today, there's the Daily Beast reports that the judges say that the shutdown broke the immigration system for years to come. It will take them years to make up the cases that they weren't able to hear during his stupid shutdown of the same people that need to appear because they're claiming asylum. And the judges say, dump the wall. Dump the 2,000-mile wall and instead double the number of immigration judges to deal with these cases. Well, here's a little flashback for you. Here was the first time that anybody suggested that we get more judges. This is when the family separation stuff was going on and kids were in cages and video and audio of kids crying. Dad, oh, God, that heartbreaking. It was like 4 or 5 minutes of this kid just crying so hard that the kid was going to bite their tongue, okay? You ever cry that hard where you bite your own tongue? That is deep. I think everybody just went, yeah, I know that. Yeah. Well, here was Trump. They asked him, why don't you just hire more judges? I don't want any judges. And we don't need no stinking judges.
So what I'm asking Congress to do is to give us a third option, which we have been requesting since last year, the legal authority to detain and promptly remove families together as a unit. We have to be able to do this. This is the only solution to the border crisis.
There is no crisis.
We have to stop
You're the crisis.
Child smuggling. This is the way to do it. And ultimately, we have to have a real border, not judges. Thousands and thousands of judges they want to hire.
Yeah.
Who are these people? When we vet a single federal judge, it goes through a big process. Everybody that's ever met her or him, they come, they complain, they don't complain. They say he's brilliant, she's brilliant, he's not smart enough to be a judge. Now we're hiring thousands and thousands. What country does this?
Judge Dana Lee Marks, an immigration judge in San Francisco and president emeritus of the National Association of Immigration Judges, said the current roster of roughly 400 judges is less than half of what we need. I've got 1 million, literally 1 million cases backlogged. We need 1,000 judges. We're having a tsunami of retirements because working conditions have become so unbearable. It's incredibly stressful because we know that the consequences of our cases are literally life and death. The Department of Justice, which oversees the immigration court system, already had a crisis on its hands before he shut down the government, Judge Marks said. With a backlog of at least 800,000 cases in a system with too few judges and too little funding, judges have become, in a way, the sacrificial lamb in this process. She said. We have 60 courts, we have 400 judges, and 1 million immigration cases. And those 400 keep this system moving. They're supposed to do 4 3-hour hearings per day. And they bring people in like it's traffic court. They bring them in, like 20, 30 at a time. She says, we have to speed through the backlog. The Department of Justice said in April, it's going to impose quotas. on the judges. They have to do 700 immigration cases a year to earn a satisfactory performance rating, and 15% or less of their cases have to go to a higher court. So they have to increase the speed of their adjudications and decrease the errors that could lead to appeal at the same time. It's impossible, and this president wants his stupid wall for his stupid, ignorant base.
Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
So I just realized that I was talking to you about the polar vortex, and I didn't explain to you what your gift is. Some of you in the colder climes have been asking us here in Florida to make you long sleeve Randi Rhodes t-shirts, that very fierce, beautiful Air Force Randi Rhodes t-shirt. And we've done it. They're done. They're there. See, that's the boys. We have a girls also. They are very, very good looking. I think they came out great. Do you love that? I love that. You see how the microphone is right in the cleavage area. I just think that's very flattering. I do. I think it presents a nice slim line, a nice long line. So they are on sale now at RandiRhodes.com. And this money that, we raise from selling these will obviously go to the purchasing of the new equipment that is super expensive. And then we'll be able to make an announcement that I think you will like. So I'm always looking to make you happy. It's a win-win is what it is. Those long sleeves t-shirts are really nice. And the other thing that we're considering making for the spring might be a hoodie, but I'm having the man who makes my t-shirts. His name's Jack. Hey, Jack. Jack makes my t-shirts. Jack is very, very good at this. He's sending me a hoodie, and if I like it, if it's a good one, if it's quality, and I can keep the price, reasonable, then we'll do a hoodie also for the spring. Anyway, I digress. Please go, just go to RandiRhodes.com, and in the top right-hand corner, there's a white oval, and it says merch, as in merchandise. That's where you can buy them, and, we're very good at getting them to you. So anyway, here is Donald Trump lying about things that matter. Shocking, I know, but it matters. It matters. You know why? We have until February 15th, I swear to God, to prevent one of two scenarios. And then we have until March to prevent a third devastating scenario. So here's what's coming. Next week is going to give the State of the Union on Tuesday. Wednesday, we don't know if Michael Cohen is going to be testifying in public at the Oversight Committee. Thursday, Michael Cohen is going to testify at the House Intelligence Committee non-publicly behind closed doors. That is on because today the majority leader, Kevin McCarthy, who really is just as criminally guilty as everybody else, put Devin Nunes back on the Intelligence Committee. Why that man is still on the Intelligence Committee after we know he runs over to the White House and tells them everything is beyond me. But the majority leader, just like the Speaker of the House, controls all the committee memberships. So McCarthy put Nunes back on Intel. So anyway, they've now formed the committee. The committee is whole, and they can take the testimony of Michael Cohen. So that'll happen on Thursday. Then on the 12th, Michael Cohen will testify in front of he'll testify behind closed doors at the Senate Intelligence Committee and give his testimony to them. And then on the 15th of February, we will have either the president take unto himself a very dubious legal argument that was just completely destroyed yesterday by our national security experts, who you may like or not like, because Gene Haspel, for me, will always be the torture meister, always. The CIA, the DNI, the FBI, counterintelligence, and the cybersecurity experts at NSA all testified yesterday. There is no threat to the United States sovereignty or any other emergency at the southern border, but he's going to make a dubious legal case, either that he needs to declare a national emergency so he can move money around, or he's going to start another debilitating government shutdown over the stupid border wall, because it doesn't look like there will be a deal to give this president $5.7 billion for his stupid down payment on his stupid border wall that Mexico is supposed to pay for. Then in March, as if you will not have been through enough in February, we are facing defaulting on our debt. I mean, literally taking the United States bankrupt. Now think about who the president is. Think about who Wilbur Ross, our Commerce Secretary, is. These are the kings of making money in bankruptcy. These are the people that in chaos they can steal. Okay? And so Lindsey Graham, little Lindsey, is saying, you know, when we figure out this wall thing, when we do this bill, which doesn't look like it's going to get done. I mean, the talks haven't even begun, and the idea of getting to agreement is essentially dead as of today. They haven't even met yet. It's essentially dead. Know why? The Democrats are not going to use the DACA kids as bargaining chips. They have already offered the president $25 billion for his stupid wall in exchange for a path to citizenship for the DACA kids, and he walked away and he turned it down. Then they did a bill that had all kinds of border security in it, and he turned that down. And he shut down the government. So then they got a clean continuing resolution to take us through February. And it doesn't include any money for anything. And the Democrats are saying we're not going to use these DACA kids as bargaining chips because we don't trust you. We don't think that you will provide a permanent fix for these young undocumenteds after you rejected the same kind of a deal before. So we just don't trust you. Your word means nothing because you lie. So we're not going to do that. So Lindsey said, you know what we should do then? Figure out what to do about the debt ceiling. We have to raise the debt ceiling. And if we don't do it in this particular moment, we're just going to be back here again, and the president is going to default the United States and create all kinds of chaos. So he wants to throw that into these conversations. The reason why you can't do business with this president is because this president reverses himself, changes his mind, says he'll do a clean DACA bill to Dianne Feinstein. Then you had Mark Meadows sitting there, Kevin McCarthy. No, Mr. President, I don't think you know what you just gave away, because he doesn't know what he's doing. And he is the worst negotiator ever. You want to make $1 million? Give Donald Trump $1 billion, and he'll turn it into $1 million. He is the worst. His father left him $412 million. This man went bankrupt 6 times.
Human traffickers.
Oh, please.
The victims are women.
Oh, my God.
And children.
Oh, my God.
Maybe to a lesser extent, believe it or not, children. Women are tied up. They're bound. Duct tape put around their faces, around their mouths. In many cases, they can't even breathe. They're put in the backs of cars or vans or trucks. They don't go through your port of entry. They make a right turn going very quickly. They go into the desert areas or whatever areas you can look at. And as soon as there's no protection, they make a left or a right into the United States of America. There's nobody to catch them. There's nobody to find them. They can't come through the port. Because if they come through the port, people will see 4 women sitting in a van with tape around their face and around their mouth. Can't have that.
You know, I thought maybe he watched weird porn. And that's where he got. But then, he may still, yeah. But then yesterday we had a caller who said, and I don't know if we got played or if because this was on the TV or so. I don't know what happened there. But all of a sudden, CNN and other networks started to explain to you last night that this rape fantasy that he has came out of the movie Sicario Day of the Soldado. Now, yesterday we had a caller who said he was an extra in Sicario Day of the Soldado, and that the cast of Sicario Day of the Soldado, the sequel to Sicario, which was probably so good that it had to have a sequel, were cheering that Trump was promoting their movie with this crazy, fantasy that he's having about duct tape and rape because it's in the movie. It's in the movie. So I don't know which way this worked. I don't know if, other networks were listening to our show and, because a lot of times we're ahead of them. Or if he had seen it on TV and just, decided that that's the way he would call in and, say that. But the president has claimed that women are being taped up and trafficked via the southern border. And, of course, that has been roundly disputed by people who work on human trafficking issues. Now, by the way, most of the women who are trafficked in this country are American girls. And it's, it's a drug thing. And it's disgusting. The other thing that I'm aware of, when I lived in New York, women coming in from the Caucasus, Russian girls, Ukrainian girls, Moldovan girls, a lot of girls from Moldova were being trafficked into the United States. Their passports were being taken away when they got here, and they weren't allowed to leave. They were forced to work as a working girl, a call girl, a prostitute, whatever, and give the money to the guy who held their passport. And when that guy figured that it was enough money, maybe he would give her back her passport. That's human trafficking. And the human trafficking experts all said that Donald Trump saying that this is happening at the southern border is divorced from reality. This is from people who work in legal services at the National Immigrant Justice Center. This is, interviews with a number of lawyers, a number of human trafficking experts that say that that is not a fact pattern that you see on the southern border, that, that it is really a plot point in the Sicario franchise. That just like he lifts his language from Goodfellas, and just like Roger Stone told Randy Credico to pull a Frank Pantangeli, tell me I wasn't ahead of that one. And that was in Mueller's indictment of Roger Stone, that he actually typed that to Randy Credico. Pull Frank Pantangeli. Just appear before Congress and say, yeah, sure, the FBI offered me a deal. So I said this about Michael Corleone, and I said that about Michael Corleone, and yeah, sure. Because his brother was threatened with, whatever. Just appearing was enough. And Michael said, when Kay asked, what was that about? It's between the brothers, Kay, right? So that was actually in the indictment of Roger Stone. So just like they're lifting language from The Godfather, just like they're lifting language from Godfather 2, just like they're lifting language from Goodfellas, you're a rat, you come from a family of rats, right? That? What does he do? He picks up the phone and she calls from the house. You know what I mean? Michael Cohen could do whatever he wants. I mean, just like they lift the language right from the... They're saying he's lifting this scenario right from Sicario Day of the Soldado.
Hey, by the way, Randy,
Yeah.
I just got confirmation from our Facebook chat room.
Yes.
John is a real person.
Oh, he
And
is?
Yes, he's a real actor.
Yes.
And he really was an extra in that movie.
So then the media followed us.
I think it was on one of the other shows on Monday night.
Oh. Then they didn't. I don't know. I don't care. When I'm ahead of on a story and then they catch up, I'm always thrilled.
It was only on one show, I believe. So everybody else followed you. If that makes you feel better.
It does. I don't really care. I just want you to know. That's all I care about. Just know that this is all fake and made up. And you know what else was in Sicario Day of the Soldado? The prayer rugs in the middle of the desert. Apparently, this is how the movie opens. Yeah. The movie opens with border agents chasing after a group of migrants on the southern border. And one of them turns out to be a Muslim suicide bomber. He kneels, prays, and then detonates his bomb. And this is on the southern border. And then after that, the agents come across an abandoned prayer rug across the border. And then 3 suicide bombers walk into Kansas City and kill innocents.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I know you quite literally said that we shouldn't be trading protections for women like Cecilia.
For young people, students. They're Jake, they're college students. They're serving in our military. They are living productive lives. And this administration has decided to vilify them and to trade on them for the sake of this president's medieval vanity project called a wall.
But let me ask you, would you be willing to vote for a bill, a compromise piece of legislation that includes money for the border wall that you called his medieval vanity project?
Well, who is going to vote for a medieval vanity project?
Well, okay. It wouldn't say that in the bill. It wouldn't say it in the bill. Would you be willing to vote for some border security money, wall money, barrier money, to give permanent protection to DACA children, DACA young people like Cecilia? Would you be willing to make that exchange?
Let me be very clear. I'm not going to vote for a wall under any circumstances, and I do support border security. And if we want to talk about that, let's do that. And let's talk about what really accomplishes border security, which is let's upgrade the technology. Let's look at the fact that the folks who are working on border security on the ground know that they need upgraded infrastructure around things like drones, and they need cameras. So, yes, I'm all for increased border security where we need it. I am not for a wall.
So there you have it. That is basically the position of the entire Democratic caucus in the House and in the Senate. Dick Durbin of Illinois said, quote, "I've tried to work with this administration on issues involving immigration with a great level of frustration. And I don't want to take so many innocent people whose fate is hanging in the balance of this political debate and start off with the premise that we have a likelihood of solving their problem." They don't believe, nobody does, the Republicans don't either, that Trump would actually provide a permanent fix for DACA. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, that hideous, heinous person who literally held up justice by holding open a Supreme Court seat because Barack Obama was the president, and he picked a very centrist man. But McConnell wanted to hold out for a different president and try to get some ideological sicko who would vote to let all the money just roam freely and let them purchase outright our senators and our House members and let Russian money in and let Chinese money in and let all the money. He held open Merrick Garland's seat. So for us to look to Mitch McConnell as some leader of the most deliberative body that we have, the U.S. Senate, is a bizarre thought. But even Mitch McConnell said, as long as government doesn't shut down again, whatever works, he'll let on the floor. So all of this 35 days, all of this pain and suffering that was inflicted, all of this thing that we'll be paying for years with the immigration judges and now a backlog of over 1 million human beings cases where they all know that they are making a life and death decision when it comes to adjudicating people worthy of asylum or unworthy of asylum, to dump them back in the middle of Tegucigalpa, the murder capital of the world, in Honduras, or to put them back in Guatemala, or to put them back in Salvador. Oh my God. So all of this pain and suffering was inflicted because Mitch McConnell wouldn't allow what they had voted on prior by voice vote, 96 votes, veto-proof majority for a clean, continuing resolution, which is what he ended up allowing a vote on and left us where we are now. Now he's saying whatever works. Now he's saying whatever works. And I have to tell you, Richard Shelby of Alabama, who's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, the committee that, gives away the money, he said he's not optimistic. He doesn't think, that there'll be a big deal. He doesn't think that there'll be any real solution here. So thank God Mitch McConnell is saying, whatever it takes to not shut down the government again, I will allow on the floor, doing a complete 180 from his previous position of suffer. Make the decision between chemo and your mortgage. They all want the president to stay out of this, is basically the message, because nobody trusts him. Absolutely nobody trusts him. His word means absolutely nothing, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows he's just so full of crap. The Progressive Caucus chairman, Mark Pocan from Wisconsin, he said, we've been very clear that a wall is unnecessary, expensive. It's a bad symbol for our country. We want modern solutions to border security, not an 11th century solution. We are going to deny Trump his wall funding because he previously killed a bipartisan proposal to provide him with $25 billion for his stupid wall, with a path to citizenship for the Dreamers. And he reneged on it. He just said, first he said yes, and then he turned around and said no, and he wouldn't give the signature. So they don't want to deal with him. They want him to stay out of this negotiation. And here's what you need to look for. Whether or not in this particular solution, if there is one, because if there isn't one, he will make this dubious claim of a national security crisis and that he has to be able to have the power of the purse, which is basically dissolving the biggest function that Congress has, which is just what Maduro did. Just so you know. This is exactly what Hitler did. It's exactly what Mussolini did. They defang the power of the purse that Congress has, that a parliament has, that a Reichstag has. And they take all these powers unto themselves. Be very clear about that. If nothing passes, that means also we haven't raised the debt ceiling. And in March, this president can default the United States and we can go bankrupt. And this is all because Republicans cannot govern. Because you are very familiar with the phrase default the United States, meaning take us bankrupt, meaning say no to all the people that hold treasuries, all the people that invest in the United States, all of us who, gave savings bonds to our kids and grandkids, right? Those bonds would be worthless because we would be defaulting. That's what that means, right? And you're familiar with this scenario because Republicans put us in this scenario over and over and over again. They fund the government in seconds now. You know what I mean? Like, the government is open for 15 days. Oh, the government is open for 30 days. Oh, the government is open for 2 days. Oh, we have a continuing resolution to get us through to next week. It's because they can't govern. They can't govern. They don't know what they're doing. They have no earthly idea what they're for. They have no earthly idea. I mean, they were the deficit hawks. Oh, we can't spend. And then they signed these tax cuts, trillions of dollars in tax cuts that now force us to have to raise the debt ceiling because they added debt. And we haven't paid for it. So it's all financed through treasuries. We have a Treasury Secretary who is obviously compromised, who makes deals with people behind closed doors about sanctions and about lifting them and about who he knows and what party he was at and his girlfriend who she sat next to at this party, and she told him, don't worry, the sanctions mean nothing, Steve will take care of it. This is the problem with billionaires. This is the problem with hedge fund managers. This is the problem with having people that A, have no relationship to the life that most Americans live, which is a paycheck to paycheck life, or maybe you have enough to get you through 2 weeks. Maybe you're very lucky and you have enough to get you through a month. Maybe you're super lucky and you've got a 3-month cushion. But very few of us have more than that. These guys are crapping in gold toilets, These guys are arguing who gets to sit next to Prince Andrew. These guys are going to parties where, the world's, oligarchs are all meeting, and they're trading favors. Enough of this. This is so unbelievable. Paul in New Mexico.
Hey, Randy.
Hey.
I want to run this idea by you, see what you think. Listen, why doesn't Nancy Pelosi say, okay, we'll give you $5 billion. All the materials and all the labor has to be made in America.
What does that do? What does that do for you?
Well, no, what it does is it creates a situation he can't say yes to. He won't do that.
He'll lie.
I mean, they won't pass a jobs bill or stimulus. That's what this would be, and they would be diametrically opposed to it. But at least you're saying yes.
No.
And then he's saying
no. He's not getting his stupid wall because it's stupid.
No, but I agree. I'm not for the wall. I'm
Right.
not for the wall. I'm for presenting something. In fact, make it ridiculous as he is. Every 100 yards you have to emboss in this wall made for and paid for by USA. You know, I mean, and then say, yes.
No, you don't want your name on the Berlin Wall. Who would want their name on that?
No, Randy, it's not a let's do this idea.
No,
it's an idea to
it's a stupid idea with a stupid name on a stupid wall for a stupid man who's creating a stupid crisis where there is none and inflicting real pain on real Americans for no good reason. He cannot have a stupid wall.
No, I know. Of course not. And then that's not what I'm for. I'm just for shutting him up.
I know, but he'll never shut up. You know, he'll never, ever, ever shut up. He'll never stop. He's just such a liar. He knows what Lindsey Graham said is true. And what Lindsey Graham said is that if the president doesn't build a wall, his presidency is over. That right there should mean no wall.
Right. You got it. Amen to that.
Okay. If he gets a wall, these white supremacist 30% of the country, they're going to be emboldened. They're going to think he kept the promise. It was not, the promise was Mexico was going to pay for it, okay? You cannot give him this stupid wall. What we need to do is the customs officers, they need better, they need more dogs, tell you the truth. Because those huge, the over-the-road trucks, the trailers, the tractor trailers, the 18-wheelers that are bringing in, Mexican avocados or that are bringing in Mexican chilies or that are bringing in whatever, they are putting on those pallets in the middle of the load their heroin, their fentanyl, whatever, and taking it right over the legal port of entry. We need more dogs that can sniff it out because nobody's going to unload a whole truck. We need better border patrol. We need, a border patrol that's not quite as corrupt as the one we have. Not a stupid wall. That's just ridiculous. Lee in Hawaii. My God, you held on for hours.
How you doing, darling?
Hey, are you my Lee?
Yep, I am.
Hi, honey.
It's been a long time talking to you. I don't know if I got a lot of time. I just wanted to talk about Vladimir Putin. This guy is one bad dude. I mean, he's the senior colonel of the KGB. When Russia and USSR fell apart, he was the guy you don't want to meet. Not a general, the senior colonel.
Right.
And has a black belt in judo. He plays ice hockey, full contact. He's the richest man in the world. This guy is a real Bond villain.
Yes, and Donald Trump is in love with him. He's in love with him and Kim Jong-un, who's also a Bond villain.
Yeah, they
and
really
Duterte, who kills his own people. He loves the autocrats because they answer to nobody, and that is what he wants. Freedom for Donald Trump means he doesn't have to, he doesn't have to follow the law. He doesn't have to, respect the Constitution, which has an emoluments clause in it that says you can't enrich yourself in a position of, honor or trust. Can't use that position of honor or trust to enrich yourself like being president. Meanwhile, his daughter is getting trademarks in Russia and trademarks in China. The intelligence chiefs totally contradict Donald Trump on what the real threats to this country are. And that's why they're called intelligence and he is called an idiot. All this talk about external threats and Trump is the real threat. You know what this is like? It's the movie. The call is coming from inside the house. Buy a stinking podcast.